There have been a series of books published by a man named David Paulides, which chronicle many disappearances that have continued to occur inside and near national parks worldwide. Although Mr. Paulides tends to focus on North America, I can understand why you might think that there isn't anything particularly strange about people going missing in large, thick forests, and you'd be right if these disappearances were normal. Oftentimes, these people disappear in a matter of seconds. David has a profile that missing person cases need to meet in order for him to investigate further. People are missing or found near creeks, rivers. There is geographical clustering of disappearances. Bad weather usually occurs just as the search party gets underway. Swamps and briar patches play a role in the disappearances. Many disappearances occur in the late afternoon. If a person is later found, they usually are unable or unwilling to remember what happened to them. The missing are often found in places that were previously searched. Berries are often somehow related to these disappearances. Okay, so this story is in one of his later books, and it really disturbed me, so I thought I'd share it with you. The location of this incident was near Mount Shasta. The age of the child who went missing was 3 years old at the time. We will refer to him as John Doe. John Doe was camping with his family on the banks of a large creek. At approximately 6 p.m., John disappeared. The parents searched for their son for a number of hours before contacting the local sheriff and the United States Forest Service. Approximately 5 hours after John went missing, he was found lying in a thicket directly next to the trail the searchers had been using. I want to interject here and say that in most of these cases, the people who go missing are never found or are found dead, so they were in no position to tell anyone what had happened to them. Well, David Paulides goes on to say that the parents of John Doe contacted him after hearing about his investigation into these disappearances with a bizarre story. About 3 weeks after the incident, John Doe's grandmother says her grandson told her that, quote, he didn't like his other grandma, Cappy, end quote. Cappy is the boy's name for Grandma Kathy. When she asked him to explain further, he said, quote, don't you remember when I was lost in the woods? The other grandma, Cappy, grabbed me and took me to the creepy place. She's really a robot. It was a cave with spiders, and there was purses and guns. I was too scared, so I didn't touch anything, but when she climbed a ladder, the light made her look like a robot. There were other robots too, but they didn't move. She made me lay down to look at my tummy. Then she tried to get me to poop on a sticky piece of paper, but I couldn't go. She told me that I am from outer space, and they put me in my mom's tummy. Then she took me back to the river and said to wait under the bush until someone would find me, end quote. She also states that her grandson said, quote, she had your same hair, your feet, and even your face, end quote. That scared her deeply, the idea of some kind of doppelganger taking on her own image to abduct her grandson. She says she got the impression that her grandson may have been talking about a hologram because of the way he described the light sparkling on the strange woman. His grandmother was horrified and called her son the boy's father, who told her that he had also heard the same story from the boy a few days ago. She admitted that she would have probably written off her grandson's story to a child's overactive imagination if it wasn't for a strange experience that happened to her a year ago when she was camping in the same area near Fowler's campground in McLeod, California. She claims she woke up one morning face down in the dirt, having been removed from her tent and sleeping bag, and she had a puncture wound on the back of her head. She said she felt violently ill that morning and felt strangely emotionless, so she thought she'd been bitten by a poisonous spider. She said she was with a friend who'd been sleeping in a separate camper, and he also woke up with a bite on the back of his neck, and he felt ill as well. The only thing strange she could recall was seeing red eyes shining through the trees in their flashlights the night before, which they thought were deer. I wanted to add one more strange case of a boy who disappeared from the Great Smoky Mountains in the late 1960s. Now, this case wasn't completely the same as the one I had just mentioned prior, but there were some eerie similarities. On June 13, 1969, William Martin brought his two sons, Douglas and Dennis Martin, and his father, Clyde, on a camping trip. It was Father's Day weekend, and the family planned to hike through the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. The hike was a family tradition for the Martins, and the first day went smoothly. 6-year-old Dennis managed to keep up with the more experienced hikers. The Martins met up with family friends on the second day and continued to Spence Field, a highland meadow in the western Smokies popular for its views. As the adults gazed at the scenic mountain Laurel, the boys snuck off to pull a prank on the parents, but it did not go as planned. During the prank, Dennis vanished into the woods. His family never saw him again, and the child's disappearance would launch the largest search and rescue effort in the park's history. Dennis Martin set off on the hike wearing a red t-shirt. It was the 6-year-old's first overnight camping trip. The youngest in his family, Dennis must have been excited to go on the annual Father's Day hike in the Smoky Mountains. But on the second day of the trip, tragedy struck. On June 14, 1969, the hikers reached Spence Field. After meeting up with another family, Dennis and his brother split off with 2 other boys to play together. William Martin watched as the children whispered a plan to sneak up on the adults. The boys melted into the forest, though Dennis's red shirt stood out against the greenery. Soon, the older boys jumped out laughing, but Dennis was no longer with them. As the minutes ticked by, William knew something was wrong. He began calling for Dennis, confident the boy would respond, but there was no answer. The adults quickly searched the nearby forest, hiking up and down several trails looking for Dennis. William covered miles of trails, frantically calling for Dennis. Without radios or any way to communicate with the outside world, the Martins came up with a plan. Clyde, Dennis's grandfather, hiked 9 miles to the Cades Cove Ranger Station for help. When night fell, a thunderstorm moved in. In a matter of hours, the storm dropped 3 inches of rain on the Smoky Mountains, washing out trails and leaving behind no evidence of Dennis Martin, whose footprints would have been swept away by the deluge. At 5 a.m. on June 15, 1969, the search for Dennis Martin commenced. The National Park Service put together a crew of 30. The search party quickly swelled to 240 people as volunteers poured in. The search party soon included park rangers, college students, firefighters, Boy Scouts, police, and 60 Green Berets. Without clear directions or an organizational plan, the searchers crossed the national park looking for evidence, and the search continued day after day with no sight of Dennis Martin. Helicopters and planes took to the air to search a growing patch of national park. On June 20th, Dennis's 7th birthday, nearly 800 people participated in the search. They included members of the Air National Guard, U.S. Coast Guard, and the National Park Service. The next day, the search efforts peaked at an astonishing 1,400 searchers. A week into the search, the National Park Service put together a plan for what to do if they recovered Dennis's body. And yet, over 13,000 hours of searching yielded nothing. Unfortunately, the volunteers may have accidentally destroyed clues about what happened to Dennis Martin. As the days flew past, it became more and more clear that the boy would not be found alive. The search and rescue effort gradually lost steam, with no sight of Dennis Martin. The Martin family offered a reward of $5,000 for information. In response, they received a flood of calls from psychics claiming to know what happened to their son. Although search parties for Dennis Martin quickly grew to include upwards of 1,400 people, including U.S. Army Green Berets, no trace of him was ever found. More than half a century later, no one knows what happened to Dennis Martin the day he went missing in the Smoky Mountains. The most plausible theories range from abduction to having died of exposure and being eaten by a bear or feral pigs in the park. But some people believe Dennis Martin was the victim of more vicious attack by cannibalistic feral humans who are said to live undetected in the national park. And the reason nothing was ever found of his body or clothing was because they were hidden far from view in the safety of their colony. For their part, Martin's family believes someone may have kidnapped their son. Harold Key was 7 miles from the Spence Field the day Dennis Martin went missing. That very afternoon, Key heard a sickening scream. Then he spotted an unkept stranger hurrying through the woods. Was the event connected with this disappearance? The 6-year-old may have wandered off and found himself lost in the woods. The terrain marked with steep ravines may have hidden Martin's body, or wildlife might have attacked the child. Years after Dennis's disappearance, a ginseng hunter found a child's skeleton about 3 miles downhill from where Dennis went missing. The man waited to report the skeleton since he'd illegally taken ginseng from the national park. But in 1985, the ginseng hunter contacted a Park Service ranger. The ranger put together a group of 30 seasoned rescuers, but they could not find the skeleton. The mystery of Dennis Martin's disappearance will likely never be solved, despite the massive effort to find the missing boy.